Good morning. My name is Alex Goldtooth, and I am from Tuba City, Arizona, but currently living in Logan, Utah. I am a engineer, so there was this one thing that caught my attention that I feel like it's everyone's right on the Navajo Nation, as well as Navajo people, to understand what is going on in the local government for the Navajo Nation. So I just read a section of a bill that had to do with making our own Navajo Nation CARES Act. And from that, we got $600 million from the US government from the COVID-19 CARES Act that will help us in this pandemic. And so I read through the bill, and it's quite interesting in a few gray areas that kind of might spark some interest for some people, or might kind of raise some concerns and questions. And I am here to break down this bill and summarize it in an unbiased opinion. I have no political background, business, financial, accounting background. So all this comes from just reading, summarizing, and paraphrasing it, and trying to keep it as short as simple, so that people can understand the most important things that are going through our Navajo Nation government. So the first one I read was legislation number 0116-20, sponsor Ed Minyazi. So the bill will go right here. So this is the bill I'm reading. So in this bill, it just talks about how we're going to use the funds to start a Navajo Nation CARES Fund Act from the COVID-19 relief from the big pandemic package that we got from the U.S. government. So without any further implementations, let's get started. So the first section of this would be authority. Who is going to pass it? Who's going to look over it? Who's going to say, hey, we need to revise this? So this was introduced on May 14th. So by yesterday, it was, went to the council, and it voted on. And today it seemed like, I don't know if it approved, but it should be live today on the 20th. The next section has to do with the findings, which is going to be the dates, when first COVID arrived to when the U.S. Said it was a pandemic. It breaks down the lockdowns happening on the Navajo Nation, quarantines, stuff like that. So this gives you a pretty decent timeline. And it says on March 27th, enact the COVID Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, CARES Act, entitled COVID Relief Fund, set aside $8 billion to the in emergency aid for tribal governments addressing COVID-19, which is the Navajo Nation, falls in between this one. So of that $8 billion, 60% of it will go to the tribal governments. Don't ask me where the other 40% goes. So the next part is that we are getting $600 million to the Navajo Nation to help fight this pandemic. And so the real stuff starts on section 4, where it talks about the funding. And so this funding right now is immediate release. So this funding says $50 million, $559,000, $530. And I'll break that down to each part of it in 10 cents. That is already going to be used in the Navajo Nation. So $10 million goes to personal protective equipment, which is, for volunteers, hospital workers, basically enterprises, and trying to help everyone, be safe when they do the COVID-19 testings and stuff like that. The next part is food, water, and basic necessities. So Navajo Nation giving out this stuff to the people. So that's $10 million. Here's one thing that they could have probably went in detail with and kind of left it vague, and is very gray for me, and kind of raises a red flag and some concerns. $5 million payroll expenses. To what payroll? Who's getting this? I think they should kind of went down and be like, oh, we're going to break it down, and we're going to say this is, like I don't know how they would break it down, but that seems very, very vague for me. Next one would be $10 million for disinfecting public areas, government buildings, and the Navajo Nation facilities. Okay. Here's the other one that kind of raises concerns is $10 million reconfiguring Navajo Nation offices for safe return government employees. So what about the rest of the employees? People at Bash's, people at, Chevron, people at Super, 7-Eleven, chapter houses. Maybe chapter houses will fall under this, but not too sure. But this it goes straight to the government employees. So the next one is computer hardware, software. People working from home, so now they got to change all this. So $2 million is going directly to that. And then here is one that they could have added more to it, or they could have added it to other, help other people. And this one it goes to healthcare facilities at $3 million. So I would think that $10 million should be for healthcare facilities, as well as healthcare workers should get hazard pay from that. That's just my opinion. Trying to think of who needs it the most, who can help, who can benefit, how can the Navajo Nation can use this to utilize all their money. The next one would be the rest of it. So up to this point, it's $48 million being used. So the next $2 million goes $2.5 million, basically $2,559,530.10. It's going toward the national financial system, which I do not know what that is. Is that supposed to be the economy for the Navajo Nation? I don't know. Not an accountant, not a finance. So that's one area that kind of doesn't understand to me. One thing that they should really, really think about is hiring cops. Hazard pay. They can use this to hire more cops. And I feel like that would benefit everybody, because they're the ones during lockdowns writing tickets, keeping people in place, telling people to stay home, making lockdowns, making sure that everything, is going good. Stop letting people in certain times. They should be able to get some type of benefit from this hazard pay, or at least, put a bonus, put a job listing to where we need Navajo cops, as well as hazard pay, not just to healthcare workers, but to people at Bash's, people to, filling up gases, restocking, because you don't know who passes through, who has the virus, and here they are taking everyone's money, taking everyone's order, and and just they really don't know what they're touching, and they're putting their lives at risk, and we are taking that for granted. So the next part would be a controller in this section, where it's introduced to where they're going to be responsible for the checks and balances, I guess you would see, all the documentation. So the controller would be very important to know who that is and who is overseeing this and knowing where all the money is going to. The next part is them creating a COVID relief work group. So in this case, it would be Dokisnitsagi 19 Relief Fund Work Group. So this composes of 4 people from each branch of the government. So 12 people, as well as the Navajo Nation president has the power to appoint somebody from outside forces to join the force group or this work group. And that could be from BIA, the U.S. Treasury, the U.S., it could be from anywhere. But it also states in the next page that chapter members, chapter officials could come and and represent the chapter and be part of this work group, which I highly, highly want people to go and talk to the chapter meetings and say, hey, we need some of this money for wood, for hay, for water. There's some people that are having a hard time, that are living way out in the middle of nowhere, that we can help, as well as person who has a certain expertise. Maybe you're an accountant, finance, maybe you're a political. This would be the work group. And so I'm thinking that they're going to get paid, thinking that once this work group is done, because later on it says after 6 months of the last emergency, and then where COVID-19 is not a pandemic, then they have 6 months to work after to submit documents and write a report on where all the money goes and submits it to the Navajo Nation president. So I highly stress people to, watch out for this and try to get, your foot in the door and try to have your voice be heard and be part of this work group, so where that we can all know where the money is going. In this case, it's going to be $550 million that we still have to use, and this has to be used by, from what I understand, by December 31st. As well as it's also going to retroact pay to where people, when this happened, we're going to start pulling away from it from March 17th, and we're going to be like, okay, we're going to start pulling money from this and start using. It's going to retroact to what we use for COVID-19. That's one thing that we should probably keep in mind, that there is a timeline, and as well as that, we're going to be retroacting pay a lot of stuff. So a lot of it could be used there, as well as infrastructure. We can use this to help build roads, water, bring water, transportation. We can help our community with this by building infrastructure. Not only that, we can build an infrastructure for another pandemic. We can learn from Taiwan, Indonesia, South Korea on how to attack a pandemic, because they had to deal with MERS, SARS, and then now COVID-19. And you look at how they're doing as a country, they're still working. Their economy never shut down. They attacked it, they got it, and I feel like we should be able to learn from them and how they went about containing COVID-19 before it became a pandemic. As well as that seems like to be it. Move video under 15 minutes, and hopefully I kind of got to the gist, and I'll leave the link down below on where I got it, and where, there's a list of bills that are going through the House, not the House, but the Navajo Nation Council, that are being voted on there. So if you guys let me know on which one should be next. FYI, they're voting on canceling the Navajo Nation fairs, as well as rodeos and 4th of July events. And that's in the list, and that has to do with something like this. So I'll post a little snippet right here. And I kind of feel like this video is important. I'm giving an opinion from engineer's standpoint, who's looking into the Navajo Nation to see, maybe present some ideas to where this funds can go to, and kind of direct the correct people to go to the correct areas and help out our people who need it the most. All right, thank you. Have a